Hi, my name is Alessandro Gangelosi and that's a video tutorial coming from cgcookie.com for Max Cookie. This time I'd like to come back to talk about particles, and I'd like to see some useful tips and tricks you can use to manipulate particles in a different way, using some features that are really useful and stay in 3ds Max since a lot of version, and maybe you don't know how to use it. You know that we have some stuffs there inside the compound object as the blob mesh and the mesher that are really useful with particles. You know that the blob mesh can be used to create something like a fluid mesh using particles, or using also other mesh as the other usual and normal polygonal mesh. And the mesher is something that can convert a particle system to a normal mesh, and that's really useful. Let's see what happened. We have the possibility, for example, to create, let's create a particle flow source, and we can go at full screen, and you see it's really simple particles. It's not a problem to configure all the stuffs, we don't need it. I go just to there to change it a little bit, so I'll say to see in the viewport the geometry, and you see that actually we have some boxes going away. If we create, for example, compound objects, a mesher, you see that's the mesher, and we have just to say pick objects, and we have picked the PF source, and you see that we have a copy of this this particle system done using the mesher. The control we have inside the mesher is really simple. You see that we have the time offset, so we can change the timing. So you see it is beginning before because we are using the -3, or we can have it later. So you see it starts later. So it is useful to retime particles using the mesher. Let's go back to the 0 frame, and you see that we have the possibility to have the build at render time. So actually we have nothing inside the viewport because it can be a really slow particle system, but when we go to render the scene, you see that just a moment to peek, you see that we have the particle system inside the mesher too. And that's really interesting because you can speed up the visualization. You have the update, so if you are changing something there, you can click over the update to have the same changes to the particle system. You have the possibility to have a custom bounding box, so you can use a different bounding box to have it inside the viewport, and that's a different feature, not so much useful for the main purpose I have in mind. And you see that there we have another really interesting stuff, is the use all pflow events. Let's imagine that as you see the particles are the same inside the mesher, but let's imagine that we have something like, for example, let's imagine to have a new node as a test event in age test, but let's copy it there, and let's remove this one using the cancel. And when we have the age test, we like to have, for example, the particles going to another shape, so let's say shape, and we change it to sphere. Okay, let's see what happened inside the viewport. Okay, we can change the timing, so let's say we have this test to 10, and we have the geometry inside the viewport too. So you see that the particle after a while will change from cube to sphere, and the mesher has the same things there. Let's select the mesher and let's go there. And let's say no to use the all events, add, and you see that we have two events. The first one, that is the bird event, and the second one, that is the morphing of the shape. Let's say just the first one, and you see that we have the particles bird and we have the cubes, and then when we move to the second event we have nothing inside the mesher. And that's really useful because maybe you can need to work with just some events to work as a mesh, and it's a really interesting way to tune your effects. Let's say use all particle flow events and we have back our particles. As you see, now we have a mesh, so we can, for example, assign a material, and that's really simple. We have no problem because we are talking about a mesh. And another thing, now we have a mesh, so we can imagine, for example, to have a blend, and you see that we can blend this one as a mesh without problems. So we are completely changing the way we can manipulate particles, and it is in any way it is similar to the PRT tools we have inside Krakatoa, because we can load particles and we can manipulate it as objects, but then we have to render it using the Krakatoa rendering engine. Using this way, you have particles that are poly mesh, and you can work with it as we are talking about usual standard polygon mesh, and that's really useful and really interesting. The same thing can be done using the shape instance. So for example, I can instance particles there and I can have it there back. Another interesting thing is that, for example, let's imagine that we have there a multi-sub objects, material, let's discard the old one, let's say for material. Okay, the first one is a standard material, and that's red. We can copy it there as a copy, and the second one is a white material, and then back another copy, and this one is green, and then another copy, and this one is, for example, blue. So we have a multi-ID, and in particle flow we can assign a material to this particle system, and let's imagine to have a new insert operator. Let's go there for it's faster to create it there. New. I have to search for it. Let's have material frequency, and let's copy the material frequency there. The material frequency gives us the possibility to give different material ID to different particles. So let's copy this material there. So the material is assigned as an instance, and we say that we have material ID 25% of possibility, 25 for every single ID until the ID 4, because we have 4 material. Let's say to show it in viewport, it's not so simple. Sometimes we are not able to see it in viewport, but we'll work on it. And let's go to render a frame, and you see that we have the particles coloring there in the right way, but you see that there we have just the red particles. Let's pick the meshed particle system and let's assign the right ID, and you see that we have the right ID moved to the mesher 2. So if we try to render, you see that we have the same copy. So also the other things as the mapping coordinates and the material ID. So you see that we can move the all the properties from the particle system to the mesher, so we can have a complete control over it. And the good thing is that we have also the possibility to manipulate the measure. So we can imagine to have an animation without a problem. So you see that particles are animated and we have no problem to do it. Let's imagine also that we have a modifier, and let's imagine that we have a band, and then we have a band from the other side, and then from the other side too. It's really a stupid thing, but you see that we have the possibility to manipulate particles in a really good way. The only problem we have with this way to work is that if, for example, we set to off the particle system, we have no meshed particle system there. So the problem is that we need the particles there to sit, and that's not so good because we will have the same speed because we need particles to be generated. But in this way we can have some trick to solve the problem. So let's imagine that we have this problem there, and we can imagine to solve it. If we select the meshed particle system, you know that we have also the various command there. We have the array, but we have also the snapshot. And as you see, the snapshot gives us the possibility to create copy of a mesh, an animated mesh, so something that is morphed or maybe changed or animated. It's not a problem. And we can create some copies. We can imagine, for example, copies from 0 to maybe 80. Okay, and we like to have, for example, 5 copies, and we can have a clone method as a mesh. Okay, and you see that we have the copies. Now if you go there, you see that we have measure 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can imagine to go back there, set to off, and you see that we have just the other mesh. And you see that we have this possibility in this case, but we can have a problem. And let's try. You know that now we have some copies, so it will be possible, for example, to have a morpher. With a morpher we can give the different list of morph target to have the final animation without the particle system there in viewport and in rendering. So let's say that we like to pick this one. Let's try to pick, and you see that we have no possibility. That's why we are using the particle system since the birth. Obviously, at the birth we have just one particle, so just a precise number of vertices. But the mesh number 2 have a different number of particles and a different number of polygons. So you can use the morpher to solve this problem, just in case you have a precise number of particles since the beginning. What I mean is really simple. Let's select all this measure copy. Let's remove it. Let's pick there, and we have enabled. Then let's go there, and let's say that we have the particles since frame 0. So you see we have just particles moving away, and we can say, for example, that we have a divergence value and with a different speed, and you see what happens. We have particles flying away in all direction. Okay, and we have also the morphing. In this case, if we select this one and we say please create a snapshot with a range of 5, okay, then we go there and we set to off. If we select the measure number 2 and we have the morpher, and we select the first empty slot and we say pick from scene, you see that it is giving us no possibility to select it, and that's why it's really simple. That's why we are using different shapes. So we have particles going from a box to a sphere. So at precise frames number, we have different topology. So we have different timing. Something we can do is to remove the peak, select all the measure, remove it, select this one, select to particles and set to off this one. We should have boxes every time, and this time we should have no problems if everything is going the right way. Set to off this one and select the first one and Morpher and peak. Okay, and you see that now we have the other tools. So let's imagine the tree, and then back we have there the Morpher 4, and there we have the Morpher 5, and there the Morpher 6. Okay, then we can pick the measure from 3 to 6, so we are talking about the morph target, and we can hide it. Now we can animate it, so we can imagine, for example, to have there this one set to 100%, sorry, 100%, and then for example there we have this one to 100% and this one to 0%, and then there we have this one to 100% and this one to 0, and then back there this one to 100, this one to 0. Obviously I'm doing a really simple animation, it's not the right way to do it, but you see that we have particles going away with the right animation and also the other changes we done to the morpher. And you see now we don't need to have the particle flow loaded inside the scene, so it's really fast because it's just a morphing between particles. Sorry, so that's a way, for example, to manipulate particles in a really fast way and a really simple way. And I like to see another way we can use the measure. So let's reset the scene. Okay, reset. Okay, we can have, for example, let's think about a sphere. So it's really a simple thing. Let's imagine that we have an animation. Let's go at full screen. To see everything, and there you see that we have this sphere animated. Let's move it there. Okay, let's change the animation. There I like to select all the points linear, and this one is linear too, close, so the speed is linear. Okay. In this case, if we set a particle system using, for example, pflow, and we say to use, we need a position object, add this one. Okay, if we use this emitter, you see that the particles are using this emission and the speed of the objects. Let's say that we have particles emitted until 100. So we have particles emitted. Let's go for point, and let's go for have 100% particles inside the viewport, and we say 200 particles. Okay, you see that the particles are going in this way. We can have a variation, we can have something like that, and you see that the particles are going in the right speed using this value. Or if we set 0 as a speed, the particles maintain a link with the position objects and with the animation of the objects. So I'm saying to the particles that animated, and you see that we have particles created by the objects. Let's imagine that we have the position set. We like to have something emitted as some flares from the sphere. So we have this animation, and we have about the speed. We have maybe 3 meters in all direction, random 3D, and that's the result. But that's something like a comet or a meteor, and that's not what we like to have. We like to have something similar to have a sphere, and if we select the particle flow and we emit the particles using this sphere, so remove the first one and add the second one. That's what I mean. So I mean particles emitted from the center of the sphere all around, and then link it to the sphere. How we can do this stuff? It's really simple. We can use this emitter there, and obviously it's better to have the same scale, and we see we have 0, 2, 3, and we can Control C and Control V to have the same scale. So if we set the animation, you see that's the animation. Let's go there. Let's say that we have a delete event after a while. So let's go there, delete, and let's say particle age maybe 30, and let's see what happened. So you see we have particles dying, and we can have also drag. So let's put a drag inside the scene and select the p-flow, open the particle view, and we can have a force by name drag, and you see that we have a tracking there. Okay. Let's see, for example, to have also some turbulence inside, so we can have a wind and select the p-flow, and we can have another force by list wind. Okay, so actually the wind is moving in this direction. We can set to 0, and we can start having turbulence. And let's start playing with the. So you see, actually that's the result. Okay, let's have more frequency. Okay, and let's try to have also more damping. Let's try with 20, 20, 20 in all direction. So you see we have this strange moving particles, and that's really interesting. Okay, if we have this configuration using the first sphere, we can see what we can obtain. That's the result. You see we have something like a comet with a turbulence, and that's not the result we are trying to achieve. It can be interesting, but it's not the right one. So let's remove and let's add back again this one. Okay, that's our particle system. Now we are able to say, let's say, to use the geometry. So that's the particles. Okay, and we can have more little shape. Okay, something like that. Then we can have a measure, compound objects, measure, and we can pick this one. Then we can align there. Okay, and let's see what happened. You see that we have a copy there of the same particle system. And then the really simple thing we have to do is to select the measure and select to link it to the first sphere. So let's select the first sphere. Now we link it, and you see that we have the particles moving and going with the first particles, and we can have also the possibility to have the particles before sorry, let's say something around this, and you see that we have particles starting at the beginning and then moving with a sphere, with no need to make something really strange. And you see that it is working perfectly, and we can obviously change it and work with it without problems. But let's imagine that we want to have something like that, but we like also to have a little bit of movement due to the sphere animation, so some wind and movement dragging. So how we can simulate it? We have no possibility to say that we have particles there and we like to follow the animation of the main sphere, but we can simulate it, and you know we can simulate it in a really simple way. So we can simulate it with another wind. Let's imagine to have a wind like this one. Select the particles going there and add a new force, and in this force we can add also just the second wind. So that's the result. You see that the particles are moving away in this way, and we can pick this wind, we can rotate it in the right way, and let's imagine that we have less strength, just a little bit, you see. So that's the result. We have the particle deformation as we done at the beginning, and we have just a little bit of wind, and it's really good because we have the dragging of the atmosphere, but we have also the animation as we like, and that's really, really good. So using the mesher, you see that we have the possibility to manipulate the particles in a different way, something that is really similar to the PRT loader, but you know that we can render these particles. So when you need to render just particles using Krakatoa, you can use the PRT loader, but when you need to render objects created by the particle system, you can use the mesher, and it's a really simple way and really useful to manipulate particles. So let's continue to see more stuffs we can do manipulating particles to obtain different things from the other tutorials we've done before. A simple thing I like to show you is that you know that we have there inside 3ds Max the possibility to use the scatter. And if we like, for example, to create something like flowers over a mesh, you can use the scatter, or you can use third-party plugins as the multi-scatter or Forest Pro or something like that. But we have a possibility to create a more complex scattering system using the particle flow system. So let's imagine to merge something I done before, and I'm talking about the subjects. Let's have just one flower, or maybe just one mushroom. You see that we have there a mushroom, and we can use the scatter, but we can use also the particle flow. So we can go there and say to create a particle flow system, we need to use this plane, so the terrain, as an emitter. So position objects, and this one, okay, and we need all the particles at the beginning. So emit start and emit end at 0, and we have actually 200 mushrooms. Let's say that we like to see all the mushrooms, and we can go there and select just the first phase. So polyselect, select this one, close, go in particle flow. So we have the mushrooms just over the terrain and not on the sides. Let's scale it there. Okay, position and this one, and we have to say selected faces. Okay, so we have just on the first part there. I don't need rotation, I don't need speed, and I need the shape instance. Okay, and the shape instance is the mushrooms, and there we need to show the geometry. So you see we can hide the first mushrooms, okay, and go back there, and you see that we have our mushrooms there all planted. To change the position, obviously we have the possibility to work with the surface offset, and we can, you see, move it to have it up the mesh, and then you see that we have the possibility to scale it and to have variation, so we don't need to have all the same. We have also the acquire mapping and acquire material, so we have the same material as the first one, and it's all obviously we have also the possibility to say that we like to avoid this problem as the interaction between two mushrooms, and to have it you have to use the keep apart, and the keep apart give us the possibility to repel particles, but it will repel during animation. So the simple way is to have there separation, and you see that we can have a distance between the mushrooms. You see that it's really a regular way to have mushrooms there, but we can also select the objects there, going in the material editor, apply a material, and then have let's imagine, for example, a noise. Let's see it. And we can have big differences there. Let's create just some area. Okay, we have this map. We can go there, particle flow, and there we can also change the density using the grayscale. Obviously we have some problem because the visualization of the map can be different from the real application of the map, but you see that we have a way you can, for example, render this object to see if the density map is right and how to tune it. And if you like, you have the possibility also to rotate it. Obviously now it's really high, but you can use, for example, the random horizontally. Obviously now the object has also the problem that the pivot is not at the base of the mushroom, but it is on the middle of the mushrooms. But you see that we can have the possibility to control a scattering system just using particle flow, and that's another way to control particles and to manipulate particles with particle flow and some basic tools we have inside 3ds Max. So this tutorial was just an introduction to some feature really useful to manipulate complex scenes with particles inside 3ds Max. We saw simple examples, but you know you can apply the things to more complex stuffs and solve a lot of problems. Maybe in the future we'll try to work on a more complex project using this kind of simulation feature to solve a complex situation. So I think that's for the moment that's all, and we'll see together again to the next tutorial on CG Cookie. So thanks for all, and bye.